attacked any people. They would intentionally and deliberately shoot the meeting places. They destroyed all the buses that we planned to use for the evacuation purposes. In 10 days, they reduced all of that to ashes. The evacuation was never enabled because the enemy thwarted all our efforts. Meanwhile, our residents attempted evacuation on their private vehicles, and the armed forces did relieve them outside the city, but they would only travel to the first checkpoints with a Russian flag flying over it, and they'd be told the following: we haven't received an order to allow passage for any residents of Mariupol. They would have to take a U-turn, and this Russian propaganda would add to the message that you've been abandoned, they've left you. And only on the 13th of April, when the whole world coalesced around evacuation from Mariupol, the evacuation was enabled with private vehicles. When the enemy troops opened the passage through their checkpoints, and people have been able to leave the city, traveling to Berdiansk, Zaporizhia, and from Berdiansk, they've traveled onwards. So this has finally happened then, and now about 150,000 people have been able to leave Mariupol into Ukraine-controlled territories. There are over 100,000 people staying in Mariupol, but 120,000 people are staying in Mariupol. There are also people in the outskirts wanting to evacuate. That's another 60,000 people. So we keep urging every day, every morning to the entire global community that we need to stand together to liberate Mariupol, to evacuate the innocent civilians from Mariupol. The Mariupol stands, and as long as it stands, our country shall stand. Earlier, some negotiations with France, Greece, Turkey were in progress about the international humanitarian missions to Mariupol. Has any progress been made in these negotiations? What came out of these negotiations about the international humanitarian missions? We have to make it clear that the Russian Federation does not seek to support any international mission, and we know clearly why that is so. Either Red Cross or a Turkish mission or any other mission, like a French mission that tried to intervene, they would come to the city and witness firsthand the atrocities abominably created by the Russian troops. They destroyed hospitals, dozens of dead corpses, the raised drama theater, hospital burned to ashes, with heavily injured residents of Mariupol who stayed inside at that point. This is a war. This is a genocide of the Russian-speaking population of Mariupol. This is the war that was launched by a war criminal, Putin, against our society, our nation. And the only he has succeeded in his special operation is razing the city of Mariupol, destroying the Ukrainian population of Mariupol. That he succeeded in. We lost the connection with Mr. Boychenko. Please go on. We can hear you now. We're trying to regain the connection. We lost the signal, unfortunately. Let's wait. We hear the tragic news from Mariupol, as we heard from Vice Prime Minister Vereshchuk. There'll be no humanitarian corridors operating in Ukraine today. And let us test out the connection. Okay, we can hear you fine. Please carry on. And we have more questions for you in store. We have lost the signal again. We are working to reconnect. The Vice Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk reported that there will be no evacuation corridors in operation today. As the mayor of Mariupol has told us earlier, that people have not been able to leave Mariupol driving their own cars. I'm passing the floor to the journalist. We have a question in here. You will hear it interpreted. Over to you.
Greek national television, ERT. Do you have evidence that Russian forces dropped chemicals on Mariupol? And is it true that they brought mobile crematoriums?
Firstly, about the war crimes that have been evidenced in Mariupol. The first crime committed on the 9th of March, when the Russian warplane dropped 2 bombs on a maternity ward in Mariupol, where the residents died, women and children. The second war crime was committed on the 16th of March in Mariupol, when another enemy plane dropped 2 bombs on the Mariupol drama theater, and there are many such war crimes that have been documented. We documented the fact of razing our town. 40% of the multi-story building have been reduced to rubble. They're past any repair, and this is pertaining to the majority of people in Mariupol. We have the video records, photographic evidence that are now collected by the relevant agencies of our country. And these are war crimes. The day before yesterday, the Russian troops attempted to strike our city with a chemical attack. They tried to drop the chemical agent on our defenders. The agent did affect our defenders. A few people in the outskirts of Mariupol were also affected. They sensed the sweet taste in their mouth. This warned them in the towns and villages around Mariupol, and people started fleeing from these outskirts of Mariupol because they sensed danger. There's no way to collect evidence of that. A lab would need to do the analysis to make the finding, but the enemy troops and the Donetsk proxies of Russia have stated that they intend to deploy the chemical agents because they cannot defeat our defenders who are defending the city. And they were the first to allege that they had committed the crime. Before that, information was available that there are allegedly some chemical labs in the city developing some chemical agents or weapons. And we knew that they were planning to launch this attack, and this unfortunately has happened.
Is it true that they brought mobile crematoriums?
Look, 1st of April, the official government of Mariupol, the utility company, recorded the fatalities. At that time, we recorded over 5,000 civilians who died resulting from the impact of the shelling bombings by the enemy of aviation. From the 21st of March, we haven't been able to record the fatalities because the troops of the Russian Federation advanced in depth into the city and the street fighting commenced. At that time, thousands more remained dead in the streets of our town. According to our estimates, it's over 20,000 people who were killed by the enemy troops of the Russian Federation. An enemy plane would bombard the city starting with the 9th of March incessantly. Now they've shut down the city to disguise the evidence of these atrocities. They're trying to sweep them under the carpet. We know the records that they're uploading in YouTube or some other channels that the bodies have disappeared. Where did they go? Did they get up and go? They're trying to bury them and hide the traces of their crimes. They are collecting the bodies, and there are 3 scenarios that they have already deployed. Our intelligence have confirmed that 13 crematoria have arrived in the city and are preparing to eliminate the evidence of the war crimes committed by the Russian Federation. We'll take one more question.
Polish radio. How many civilians died in Mariupol, and do you see there is war crimes there?
What has happened in Mariupol? The fact that 90% of infrastructure has been razed by the Russian Federation, that the hospitals were bombed, the bomb shelters were bombed, that the innocent civilians were killed in Mariupol. 21,000 plus is the number of fatalities in Mariupol. These are the fatalities of the shelling, of the bombing. And we believe this to be war crimes, atrocity crimes. This is a genocide of the Ukrainian nation by the Russian Federation in our city and in our country. Thank you. And one last question to you. As a mayor of Mariupol, which 2 months ago used to live a regular life, and now day by day is falling heavier into ruin and despair, what do you personally feel? I feel the following. This is a revenge for the determination of the city we showed in 2014 when they offered the Russian peace for us, the Russian world for us. And the city did not buy that. We went on to develop a modern city. We built infrastructure, hospitals, schools, kindergartens. The city blossomed, becoming a European city, a city for the future, a dream city. A lot of labor went into that. A lot of people committed themselves to make that happen, whilst no positive change happened in Donetsk. This was done because of rancor, because of envy. They destroyed the city for others not to see its rebirth, becoming the European city of the future. As for me personally, my heart was torn out because for 8 years I went to make it happen, and it will stay that way. The city of Mariupol shall always be a Ukrainian city. Thank you for your answers. We've unfortunately run out of time, so we have to conclude this 3rd briefing. Mr. Boychenko, we pray for the rescue of Mariupol. This concludes our 3rd briefing about this heroic city of Mariupol. We'd like to thank the journalists who help us to spread the truth about the true developments in Mariupol. Thank you.